Okay, today is March the 4th. Welcome to Coder Radio. You say here. I am re-recording this, so I might run through it a little quick. Unfortunately, I mangled the audio when I originally recorded this. This is our February mailbag. So, bad things happen when amateurs like me try to edit themselves. Won't be doing that again. Here we go. So we're going to go through a couple news items here and your feedback for the month of February. Number one item, TypeScript 5.8 is out. That's right. There's a couple things in here that are interesting. One thing that's super interesting is it adds a flag that allows only runnable JavaScript. So no TypeScript magic, right? Nothing that can't be transpiled into JavaScript. The interesting part about this is this flag is already going to be supported by both Deno and its predecessor Node. I'm pretty sure the vast majority of you know Deno. I'm joking. No Node, not Deno, right? Because, that makes more sense. There's a few other small things in here. Otherwise, it looks like a pretty solid release. How many of you are going to be able to upgrade to the latest TypeScript? I don't know if that's many. Maybe you can. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. But it is nice that it's coming out. A thing a little more curious, I would say, is CSS custom functions are coming to Chrome. And only Chrome for now. This is interesting. So if you're familiar with like a hybrid property in, SQL Alchemy, Python-like stuff, it's kind of like that, but for CSS, where you can compute, you can basically have a function that returns a value, and that just becomes, whatever the CSS property would have been. I am hoping that the plan is to demo this out in Chrome and bring it to like the WD3. It's like WD40. Haha. No, to bring it to the standards body and get it implemented in more browsers. It is a great idea. My fear is that this is going to be yet another kind of Chrome-only fragmented feature that, the majority of us don't end up using because, our customers are in other browsers, right? They might open Safari, especially on mobile, right? They might open mobile Safari. They might be in Firefox. So all of that is something we have to think about. I just wish this was more of a standard, and maybe it will be. So let's keep hope alive. On the gaming side of life, a little bit of fun news and then some bad news. But the fun news is tons of Command & Conquer, which for folks who don't know was a mid-90s, I would say. Might have my years wrong. Someone can correct me on the Discord. RTS game, kind of like a sci-fi near future kind of deal going on. It's gone open source. You can check it out. I know there's some folks in our Discord talking about modifying it to get it to run on Linux as a kind of a community project. If you're interested in that, pop in that Discord and let them know. I love when these older games go open source. One of my fondest memories kind of trying to, I'm always, every year I'm going to build a game, right? I think a lot of us have that problem. I'm going to build it. I went painstakingly through the Jedi, this is so old, the Kyle Katarn, right, starring Kyle Katarn, Jedi Academy games, because that source code is and was, and I believe still is available. And it was just, first time I saw it, I was pretty new, I think, at least the first one they released. And just looking at that code, that C++ code, it was amazing to see. Yeah, they're like, they're just developers. They're doing the same thing we are, right? Pretty cool. Good stuff. Check it out. Except not everything is good. So unless you've not been paying a ton of attention, there is a new Fortnite, I won't say clone, but definitely spiritually inspired by a title that's out called Marvel Rivals. They just had an update adding the Fantastic Four. It's basically Fortnite with Marvel people. They're doing super well. And what do game companies do when they're doing super well? They fire everybody for some reason. That's right. The company NetEase, which is, I believe, a Chinese company, fired most of its American staff out of Seattle on unprecedented successful numbers. So that is just something to keep in mind. I don't know why they would do that. They claimed it was to more, I guess, co-locate their workforce, but just not a good look. Very sad for those people, but I'm sure they will get jobs at another studio. Goes with our long-running theme now of layoffs of developers. In other layoff news, and we're veering dangerously close to the political here, but we're not going to, is the, I think it's F-18, which is like the federal government's, the American federal government's for our UK and EU listeners, I should say. Internal, think of it like internal web dev studio or just dev studio. They fired them. Probably not the best idea, but, Mark Cuban's already blue skying, or do we just call it like tweeting? But we can't say tweeting, right? That he will hire them. Or I think he tweeted it. Whatever. Or not hire them. Sorry, we'll invest if they want to open their own dev shop. I personally hope that they just retire. Because who likes competition? Wink, wink, joking. Now, the coup de grace, your feedback. Ricardo writes, what was the last impression you got from making hybrid web and mobile apps for B2B? Assume your business has changed and you don't work as much on these apps, but are the things better or worse since the PWAs were the future and Ionic was making everything happen? There's a lot here. One, Ionic is basically dead. It's a walking zombie. They got acquired. I would not base anything serious on it right now. If you're from Ionic, you want to tell me I'm wrong, come on. I'm happy to have you on. Happy to hear the other side. But this acquisition did not go well. You are correct, Ricardo, that mobile apps are not a significant part of my business anymore. The reason for that is mostly PWAs, right? Or mostly just server-side web apps that run fine on mobile devices. And considering my customers are generally enterprises or, relatively large businesses, it makes a lot more sense. My impression was it was always going to be the web, right? The irony of the iPhone is the initial release where it only supported web apps had a lot of problems because you couldn't do a lot of things you wanted to do back then, right? That was back in the bad old days where all the good web dev shops were just using Flash. Well, we caught up, right? The web standards caught up. The power of the devices, very important, caught up. The browser, the JavaScript engine, all caught up. To be good enough. So yeah, I think it's web all the way for most of your business applications. Games is an obvious exception, but most people are using some sort of middleware like Godot or Unity. There are going to be developers and shops who do hybrid boutique. Do native boutique applications. I think we've already seen that there are a lot fewer of them, but there's a place for it, right? So yeah, what do I think the future looks like? I think it's just web apps. Whether we call them PWAs or they're, Rails, the Rails team is doing quite a lot for TurboLinks to make that more viable. And there's equivalencies everywhere, right? Microsoft's doing the same thing with some of their Blazor stuff. So it's interesting. Octavian writes, is there a good use case for using or adapting open source projects with an AGPL 3.0 license? I work in IT, and there have been some projects that could be useful with a bit of adaptation in our cases, but the hard copy left license make me very worried to work on them. So that is a question for your company's legal department. I have most of my clients wouldn't touch one of those with a 50-foot pole, so I tend to keep it strictly MIT, Apache, BSD. Other places might have other policies, right? So you got to check that out. You got to make sure you're complying with the license. I wouldn't encourage this, but the sad truth is you're probably not going to get caught if you break it. Though I don't think you should do that because if you do, there could be serious consequences. AGPL does give more leeway than certainly traditional GPL. So it would be a conversation you have to have probably with your company's I don't know if you work for a company or some other organization, but with your organization's legal department to see what are they comfortable with, what are your obligations under the license, and how would they, what process could be put in place to maintain continued compliance with the license. The more I talk about this, the more I think it might just be more trouble than it's worth if you have to go through all these hoops. But it will depend on your organization, kind of the culture and how risk averse your lawyers are. The Golden Dragon, which is a fantastic name and honestly could be a restaurant name, says, hey, Mike, I just wanted to stop by and say glad the show is continuing. And I'm looking forward to many episodes to come. Yeah, I actually did 2 recordings this morning, 2 interviews. One comes out next week, and one comes out, believe, in 2 weeks. I have to double check, or the week after. My calendar's all screwed up because I mangled the original version of this. But yeah, I got a lot of cool people on. kind of stretching the gamut. Some folks you definitely have heard of, some folks from the Linux side of life, some folks more focused on process stuff. I actually have some pretty interesting event sourcing people coming on, so that should event modeling people coming on, so that should be good. I have some people from the gaming world actually this week on Friday, but it probably won't come out for a few weeks. Game developers coming on, so there's a lot of variety, a lot of stuff, a lot of different walks of life, and of course our beloved dark matter developers. So Mike T, who I'm going to refer to as Mr. T because I pity the fool, writes, what has died out in contract software development during the move away from 0% interest rates? So many shops, but I'll keep reading. Are we going to see the end of front-end-flation? Front-end-flation? I think you made up a word. And exponential growth in JavaScript frameworks. Okay, so first off, I'm going to tell you what I think that made up word means. Basically, more front-end focused development teams and shops. Yeah, are you going to see the end of that? No. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you're counting. Certainly, you're not going to see, like we used to see, shops positioning themselves as we are the Angular experts, I don't think. Maybe same with React. I think people are selling more solutions-oriented pitches. It's a little tough for me because the way the question is phrased, the JavaScript frameworks they're growing, but it's kind of been a battle royale, right? Certainly React has won in a lot of ways. If you look at the numbers, I think the Toby. I always forget the name of the organization, but or even Stack Overflow is a better one. React has its dominance is pretty much solidified, with Angular behind it and Vue a distant third. But Angular is not even that close of a second. I have a feeling you're going to see I want to be careful how I phrase this, a resistance to introduce new major JavaScript frameworks. When I say introduce, I probably should say a resistance in terms of them gaining traction, just because the industry seems to have settled on React. I personally don't like React, but that doesn't mean anything. So there you go. I mean, I write JavaScript every day. I would care to wager that those of you who are working developers, if you do, anything web related, you're writing JavaScript or TypeScript. And that's actually where I think a lot of the action is. The TypeScript language changes we talked about earlier. We don't cover this enough, and I'm trying to get an expert on, but the WebAssembly stuff is still moving forward at a pretty good pace. So if we call that front-end-flation, which is, again, a great term you've coined, I really do like it, then yeah, I don't see why not. But if you're saying like for instance, Hipster.js is basically dead, right? There's a bunch of there used to be a Objective-J. I shit you not. Somebody did a Objective-C inspired JavaScript, and I think the name of the framework was Cappuccino. That's not alive anymore, or at least doesn't have significant usage. So yeah, JavaScript will be on all our graves. What can I tell you? The Crashmaster, or is it just Crashmaster? Have you pulled a Sean Parker and dropped the potential question on the thread? The rush to throw AI into everything is starting to get some companies in trouble. Yes, it is. With both customers and investors, what are your thoughts on doing this right? We don't know, right? That's the problem with AI. There has been no, again, not a lawyer, it's not legal advice, but there has been no standard of responsible, or what would be seen as responsible, irresponsible, what is considered malpractice, or, I'm sure a lot of you who are in business like me carry errors and omission, right? Like what would be considered an actual engineering error versus whatever. The only way we're going to know this Crashmaster is someone's going to sue somebody and it's going to go to court. It's probably going to take forever. And we might see what what a judge thinks is a responsible or irresponsible use in AI. I do think maybe a place where things might have to chill out is the advertising, just because some of the claims made by these AI companies are so outlandish that maybe they're open to some sort of sanction for that. Certainly, the hoovering up of data, we've seen, I joke around about the Sarah Silverman lawsuit at Black Widow, whose name was Scarlett Johansson, suing OpenAI. But that was all copyright stuff, right? Like what you're talking about, I think, is using AI in your tooling or as part of your products. We'll have to see what happens there. It's going to be a long road, but someone somewhere is going to sue somebody. I don't know. I also, it's probably true that a lot of the things you're seeing, they're throwing AI in as a marketing term, and they're not, in fact, using AI in any meaningful way. Like, certainly, I don't think consuming the ChatGPT API, I mean, is that using AI? I guess it is. I market it that way, but I don't know if that's what you mean. So we'll see. It's going to be, right now it's the Wild West, right? It's an arms race between the AI companies to build the most powerful models. The DeepSeek stuff obviously definitely kicked them in the pants. So I don't think this train is slowing down at all. I think it's full speed ahead, rock on. All right, so a few bits of housekeeping. We got lots of feedback that I didn't cover explicitly. Kind of these are the most common ones, right? So, and this is really the only one that I think is worth a general notice. The Rust stuff. So both people that I interviewed today mentioned Rust, which was not the topic of either interview. And I find it interesting that that's gotten so much presence of mind, I guess is what you'd say. That these are guys working in totally different technologies that brought it up. We had some pretty engaged chat in the Discord about the whole Rust Linux kernel thing. You know, I talk about it in one of the interviews a little bit because the guy brought it up, but I would just say certainly Rust has a lot to offer. The issues it's trying to solve are important, right? Some of the safety stuff, but you do get a lot more flies with honey than vinegar, and maybe we should try to not fight with each other, and that goes for everybody involved. I mean, I know, there's an evangelical push for Rust, and there's also some other things that go on. I'm not going to rehash the whole controversy, but certainly everybody wants to make things better. Got to try to kind of work together at that. All right, housekeeping. I know the Google stuff is still weird. I fixed it. It somehow unfixed itself. I have a ticket in. God willing, it's fixed by the time you hear this. If you want to give feedback, we have a couple places. The Coder Radio subreddit, there's the email. But honestly, the Discord is popping. If you want to be involved, just go to the Discord. Save yourself some time. They're talking about community projects, talking about some people are playing games together. Some people are actually helping each other find jobs and doing development support. So, great place. I hang out in there most days. And you can, of course, toggle it if you're busy or whatever. I strongly recommend it. Swag is coming. More guests are coming. I'm going to play around with different formats. Yeah, we've got a lot coming. Again, more of that news is in the Discord, and I'm not going to waste the people who don't follow that closely's time bringing it up here. But there's a lot of fun stuff, and I have a real editor now, so we won't have missing recordings anymore, I hope. You can find me at Dumanuku on Weapon X and Blue Sky. I need a thing for Blue Sky. Maybe like Blue Sky. See, you can tell I've been talking for 2 hours already and I'm losing my voice. You can find my company at alice.dev. Find me on LinkedIn. Find the show, Coder Radio Show on Twitter and Coder Radio on Blue Sky. And there's a subreddit and the Discord. All of that will be in the show notes. Have a good week. Talk to you next week.